Iceland, land of fire and ice, hot springs and sheep, and some of the most beautiful landscapes anywhere on the planet. And up in the northwest corner of the country, at the very edge of the Arctic Circle, one of the most remote cycling routes anywhere in Europe. The spectacular Westfjords Way. The Westfjords Way exists at the mercy of Iceland's geography, tracing vast fjords past waterfalls, hot springs, and up and over long abandoned mountain roads.
If I make it off this mountain with all my teeth and no broken wrists, I'm going to be amazed. This gravel is so sketchy to ride.
Known for its ferocious weather and wealth of awe-inspiring scenery, it is sparsely populated, but for a handful of people and 100,000 sheep.
It does make me think, what is it like living out here in winter? It must be a very bleak existence.
Defined by perfect tarmac and grueling gravel, the route culminates with the Svalvogar Sea Road, carved out of the coastline by one determined farmer and his tractor.
We are 40 kilometers away from any help. We don't have service, we don't have much food, we don't have any accommodation, and so we're just going to keep cycling.
And taking on this route, 6 friends, armed with a few cameras and one simple mission, to cycle the Westfjords Way, 800 kilometers and 8 days of riding through this breathtaking part of Iceland. All good adventures begin with chaos, and so it was with ours. We started out in Ísafjörður, the largest town in the Westfjords, population 2,500. Our first stop was the Fjord Hub, where we'd be renting our bikes for the trip ahead. There were 6 of us heading out on the Westfjords Way: Finn, Jeremy, Kaz, Minka, Trent, and me, Oscar, all of us friends through various work projects and past adventures together. But before we could set off, we had to pack up all of our gear and attach our pannier racks to our bikes. And it's here where things started to go wrong. There'd been a mix-up with some parts and the racks wouldn't fit. Without the racks, we couldn't carry our gear and the trip would be over before it began. Luckily, we had Wade, the Fjord Hub's heroic bike mechanic, who spent all night working on the bikes to get the racks to fit. But it was not a quick fix. And when morning arrived, we still only had 3 usable bikes. We had 140 kilometers to ride and a 9 AM appointment to film with an Icelandic poet named Elfar, just outside of Ísafjörður. So we decided to split the group. The 3 of us with bikes would ride out to meet Elfar, and the others would follow by car. It was far from an ideal start, but it was a start, and we were off.
It's just gone 8 o'clock, and we are starting our ride through one of the most beautiful places in all of Europe, which is Iceland's Westfjords. We're currently 66 degrees north, just south of the Arctic Circle, and we have been treated to the most glorious of first days.
The Westfjords Way is in the northwest corner of Iceland and combines hot springs, fjords and mountains into one epic route that's about as remote as you can go in Europe on a bike. The route was first established in 2021 by adventure photographer Chris Burkhardt, who loved the ride so much that he shared it on bikepacking.com for all to experience. We'd be taking on 800 kilometers of the Westfjords Way in 8 days, following it clockwise from Isafjördur, around the fjords, over the mountains, along the punishingly beautiful Svalvogar Sea Road, before finally finishing back in Ísafjörður. Half on tarmac, half on gravel, the Westfjords Way is full of punchy climbs, endless waterfalls, and hardly a car to be seen. It is known for having ferocious weather, but as we set out on our first day, we couldn't have asked for better conditions. 10 kilometers outside of Ísafjörður, we met the poet Elfar, who read to us from the Icelandic sagas and told us how this remote region of Iceland had prospered through fishing.
Icelanders have been big fishermen. So they go in every weather, like here where we are now. They went in every weather on a small boat, rowing against the storm just to fetch something to eat so they can survive.
With Elfar's stories ringing in our ears, we were now raring to get going with our own adventure. But with half of our bikes still in the workshop, all we could do was wait. Trent, would you like to give us the brief? How far have we made it?
We've made it 11 kilometers.
In fact, you can see
And
the
it is
town
11
behind
a.m.
Trent.
Let's just get the town. Where's the town?
Right there, we came from there. So we've made it 11 kilometers.
Right.
We only have 3 bikes with us. 3 are currently being constructed to some degree. We have 124 kilometers to go, and it's 11 a.m. So I think, yeah, we'll make it.
11 a.m. is generous.
Yeah, those legs will be burning.
11 a.m. became 12, 12 became 1, and after hours in the workshop, Wade did the impossible and managed to get all the bikes working with our pannier racks. Finally, we were off. It was time to put all that pre-ride nervous energy behind us and start to properly enjoy the Westfjords.
Trent, how did you get so good at that?
Okay, now it was finally time to get going. It was late, really late. We had a lot of ground to cover, and we were now in a race against daylight. But even as we rushed, we couldn't help but admire this strange and magnificent landscape. We rode from one impossibly beautiful fjord to another, and cycled on until 5 p.m, when we arrived at the Little Bear Waffle Shop for a very late lunch. Inside, the scene was well-orchestrated carnage. We devoured about 15 waffles between us, 8 blueberry pies, and 3 apple tarts for good measure. It was disgusting, it was delicious, and it was absolutely necessary.
This is why we cycle.
Filled with waffles, we continued towards our hotel at Heidala, eventually splitting off the main road and onto a long gravel track deep inside one of the fjords. The end of day 1 was in sight, but it had been a brutal start to the trip.
It's gone 9 p.m. The light is fading on day 1. 140 kilometers ridden. I am exhausted. I think we all are. But we have finally made it to Heidala and our accommodation, reception and hot spring for the night.
Well done, my dude.
Thank you, friend. That little game of avoid the potholes saved me, I reckon. Distracted me just enough.
At Heidala, we were greeted by an Arctic fox cub named Luffa, wearing his dark summer coat. Arctic foxes are Iceland's one and only native land mammal, and particularly prevalent in the Westfjords. We'd arrived almost too late for dinner, but inside was a feast of fish soup and lamb curry. We took a quick dip in the local hot spring after dinner, and then headed straight to bed. After a chaotic 140-kilometer day, my head barely touched the pillow, and I was fast asleep. I wish I could say that the long first day hadn't taken a toll on us, but we all woke up feeling worse for wear. And by the time we were done with breakfast and had all summoned up the courage to get going, it was already 10:30, and we had more than 125 kilometers to cycle.
Good morning. Day 2 of the cycle ride. We have just left our accommodation at Heidala after having a lovely breakfast spread. All sorts of nice Icelandic cheeses, homemade bread baked fresh this morning. All very, very good. Nice fuel to set us off. And it's another gorgeous day. I don't know how long this weather will last for us, but as long as it does, I am celebrating it.
The Westfjords is the oldest part of Iceland, formed by volcanic eruptions that started around 15 million years ago. Water now rules this landscape, from the fjords below to the waterfalls plunging down from above, fed by rain and snow year-round. With so few humans living in this part of Iceland and with such little pollution, the water is safe to drink straight from the streams. Everywhere you look is picture perfect, and on a good day you might wonder why this place is so empty. But after you spend a couple of days cycling through the Westfjords, you start to realise why. The geography is incredibly harsh, each settlement separated by vast inlets of water and the inhospitable mountains of the interior.
It's a funny thing cycling these fjords. I'm currently on the right bank of the fjord, and I would like to get just over there to the left bank of the fjord. But there is no bridge, no tunnel across the sea. So you have to cycle 10 kilometers inland, cross where it narrows, and then 10 kilometers back again in the opposite direction. So the distance you cover is about 120 kilometers. But as the crow flies, it's probably only 30, just because you're constantly going in and out of this incredibly wiggly coastline.
By afternoon, we'd reached the fifth and final fjord of this section of the Westfjords Way, and the road turned inland, up and over a 20-kilometre series of climbs and gentle plateaus, through a landscape carved by glaciers and the constant flow of river water. It was another long day, and as we approached lunch, we were all feeling it in our legs.
Down by the pier?
Yeah.
Oh, whoa! We had a croc attachment. Oh no! You okay?
Yeah. Oh shit.
It's tired.
Fortunately, Kaz wasn't more than a little bruised, and after some well-deserved sandwiches, we were all good to continue. The further we cycled from Ísafjörður, the more remote we felt. Beside the occasional church, farm and fisherman's shack, there was little sign of human inhabitation, nowhere to stop for snacks or any kind of food top-up. Our hotel that night was the only place to get dinner for 100 kilometers, and with our late start, we were once again pushing well into the evening. At the top of the final climb, we got a call from the hotel saying the restaurant would close at 9 p.m, and if we missed it, we would have no food at all. Nothing motivates a cyclist quite like the idea of going to bed hungry. Once again, the race was on, through the empty Westfjords landscape, bathed in golden hour light.
6k to go, 25 minutes to get there. Go, go, go!
We arrived at Hotel Lagerhol in the nick of time, and inside a cyclist's dream dinner was waiting for us. Icelandic lasagna, rice and fresh salad, heavy on the carbs and loaded with cheese.
It's the end of day 2, done 125 kilometers. We're exhausted, but we've arrived to the most extraordinary buffet.
With 2 minutes to spare.
2 minutes before they close.
But we made it,
It's
and
a maximum effort.
we shall feast.
Look at this. This food is so good. It's fantastic.
How are we feeling morning of day 3?
Not great. I've got sores on my butt. I've got a cold, so I'm not sleeping very well.
Okay, I just have a really sore throat right now. I don't know why.
We're about to smash.
3, 5, 4, 5. Jeremy, what's going on today?
Oh, I'm toasted. My knees did not hold up yesterday, but went as far as I could. Did a really big climb and then bombed the hill, and at the bottom I was just in pain, daggers in the knees.
Sad to see you go.
250 kilometers in, I'm disappointed, very disappointed to not be riding.
The team was in a rough shape at the beginning of day 3. Jeremy's knee was wrecked and he couldn't keep riding, and both Kaz and Finn were in the depths of a sickness that would come to haunt the group. After 2 big days and with half the team flagging, we decided to take a couple of tactical shortcuts and cut day 3 down from our planned 120 kilometers to just 60. We were on our way towards an even more remote section of the Westfjords, and our first stop was Holmavik, the first town we'd seen since leaving Ísafjörður 250 kilometers before. There we needed to pick up all of our food for the next 2 days as there'd be nowhere else en route. After a quick shop and a pizza in town, we visited the Holmavik Museum of Sorcery and Witchcraft. The museum explains the rich folklore of the Westfjords witches, as well as the region's fascination with witch burnings, common to this part of Iceland in the 17th century. We were all very grateful to be cutting day 3 short, but we now had a big climb ahead of us, weighed down by 2 days of food in our panniers. None of the mountains in the Westfjords stand over 1,000 meters, but we still had 15 kilometers to go to get to the summit, following the road past waterfall after endless waterfall. And at the top of the long climb, the start of a long descent, running straight down to a vast expanse of fjords and farmland.
Just had one of the best descents of my life. Fast, wide open roads, no cars. Just brilliant. What a way to end day 3.
Eventually, we turned off the main road and onto a short gravel track running down to the sea. From the description in our itinerary, I thought we'd be staying in an old stone farm hut with no running water or electricity. But at the end of the gravel road, we had a surprise in store. Minka took to the stove to make all of us dinner, and the 5 of us dined happy in this idyllic corner of the planet. The owner of the cottage came out to meet us and told us that the Northern Lights would be on full display that evening. I'd love to say that we stayed up all night staring at the sky for even the briefest glimpse of the lights, but the truth is we were all exhausted, and none of us made it past 10 PM. If the Northern Lights did dance that night, they did not dance for us. We were now almost halfway round our route in terms of distance and moving on to the southern coast of the Westfjords, famous for the huge colony of puffins that nests here early in summer. But for us, day 4 was to be a steer. For 130 kilometres, there were no shops, no towns, hardly a single tree. Even the puffins had departed their nests. There was just a solitary honesty box filled with dandelion jams made by an unseen local farmer.
Ooh.
The conditions were great and the road beneath our tyres was impossibly well maintained. Until all of a sudden, the tarmac just stopped, and we were thrown onto a set of steep gravel climbs.
Day 4, packing some incredibly spicy climbs. Gradients pushing 15% to get up high above the fjords. Tough on a loaded bike, heavy stuff.
For the 6 members of the team, the climbs were almost their undoing, and we were once again saved by a round of well-made sandwiches for lunch. The lack of road surface was the first of several inflection points for the trip, and above us the weather was also starting to turn, the blue skies slowly filling with wispy tendrils of cloud. But even when the weather started to pull in, the Westfjords never stopped being scenic, and so it continued as we rounded the coast and made it to Flokkalunda, restaurant, hotel and hot spring, all in one. And then, out of nowhere, Jeremy showed up, a box of pastries in hand.
Bro, welcome! You guys just get here? The prodigal son returns. Did you just arrive as well? That's crazy.
How was your journey back?
Oh, it's been a wild. I've met lots of characters, made a lot of friends. You know, it's kind of nice being in a car. My knee is still though. Like this is a manual car. They only had manual, and every time I shift gears, it's like.
Jeremy's time on the bike was over, but it was great to have him back with the team. And after our 127-kilometre day, we were all desperate to get in the local hot spring. So after wolfing down dinner at the hotel, we headed down to the seashore and whiled away the rest of the evening bathing with some motorhead-loving locals.
Hey, shows me.
We were loving our time in the Westfjords, but day by day a sickness was spreading through the group. Trent was now coughing like a Victorian schoolchild, and there was more liquid coming out of Kaz's nose than flowing through the waterfalls of Iceland. So on day 5, we split up. Finn, Minka and I would follow the main route, taking the coastal road around the headland before heading up and over 3 big mountain climbs. Kaz and Trent would take a shortcut inland, straight over the mountains. The Westfjords had fractured the fellowship.
Starting day 5 of the cycle ride, and we're down to just 3 people.
This really tells you something about, who the proper riders are.
We lost 1 to injury, 2 to sickness, taking the shortcut over the hills. Me, Minka and Finn. On the long route around the coast, still going strong just about.
The good news is that with Jeremy back and with a car, we could offload some of the weight of our panniers. With the wind at our backs and flat coastal roads, the morning sped by as we passed a solitary church, some sheep holidaying on the beach, and waterfalls teeming with bird life. Before setting out on the trip, we had heard horror stories of people being thrown off their bikes by the wind in this part of Iceland. We'd been cycling in calm conditions till now, but the first of the mountain passes was about to show us a different side of the Westfjords.
Just finished the first big climb and descent of today. And for the first time on this trip, the wind picked up a level of seriousness and significance that we've not felt so far. I think we were lulled into a bit of a false sense of security in the first 4 days. It was being blown left and right across the road by a pretty strong crosswind. Pretty scary at points. Made it down in one piece, but really hoping the wind doesn't pick up anymore, because we've got 2 more big climbs and 2 more big descents to go.
But the weather changes quickly in the Westfjords, and by the time we were done with a strategic early lunch in the village of Patreksfjordur, the wind had died down to much more enjoyable levels. We were feeling strong and powered over the next 2 climbs, to the top of what would become my favourite descent of the entire trip, down the long mountain road to the town of Bíldudalur. The road was about as perfect as you could ever ask for, even in the fading light and with the next day's storm fast approaching. And at the bottom of the descent, the rest of the team was waiting for us, in Bíldudalur's best and only restaurant, the fellowship reunited for a slap-up dinner at the end of the world.
How's your particular lurgy?
Well, I've had a bad cold for a couple of days, but the good news is I've successfully passed it off to everyone else, and I no longer have it. So I'm feeling quite happy about that.
Iceland's commitment to blueberry jam is the only thing keeping me going, to be honest.
The start of day 6 on our first properly moody Icelandic day. The clouds have rolled in and are hanging low over the landscape. Everything's looking very dramatic. 68 kilometers to go today, pretty much all on gravel after we get out of this town, and it's been raining all night and it's due to rain for most of today, so I think it's going to get pretty muddy at points. I am feeling quite awful. I've caught whatever lurgy is going around the group.
The sickness had finally come for me. I had a feverish sleep, waking up constantly throughout the night, and my head and nose had turned into one big bacterial soup. But the riding had to be done, and the great thing about riding in a group of 6 is that someone's always feeling up for it when you're feeling down. And though the weather had taken a turn for the worse, it had only made the Westfjords look even more beautiful.
This is our first taste of Iceland in cloudy weather on this trip, and I kind of love it. Makes the landscape really moody, but it does make me think, what is it like living out here in winter? It must be a very bleak existence when all of this is covered in snow. There are only 7,000 people who live in this part of Iceland in the Westfjords. I can kind of understand why. This is August. This is probably the nicest it'll ever be.
We had been told that the Westfjords Way gets more and more impressive the further around it you ride, and Iceland now seemed determined to put on a show for us, each section of road competing with the last for how pretty it could be in the mist. The clouds swirling round the mountains, rainbows forming in the eddies. We punctuated the day with a dip in a hot spring, where the scalding water turned us all bright pink. And then we climbed up higher and higher, over the windy plateau at the top of the Westfjords, a landscape like the moon, little here but the detritus of long-forgotten eruptions. With all the rain that had fallen overnight, every single gully now seemed to host a waterfall, rushing down to meet the sea. And the largest of all of these, greeting us at the end of day 6, Dynjandi, 100 metres tall and the jewel of the Westfjords.
It's the final kilometre of day 6. It's been a beautiful one in terms of landscapes, a very tough one in terms of riding. Been feeling pretty sick all day. Got a pounding headache, stuffed up sinuses. Not the easiest conditions for riding. For the last 10 kilometres or so, we've been going down this very rough farm track to find a little farmhouse in the middle of nowhere. It will be our accommodation for tonight.
At the end of the dirt track stood a solitary farmhouse with a commanding position over the valley. And inside was Jeremy, cooking us up a dinner far too good for this smelly group of cyclists.
Got some chicken soup for the soul.
What is it? What's in
made
here?
From scratch. It's a 3-hour simmer of the chicken stock. After the simmer, I strained it, made it a clear broth, then threw in like a moi pois.
Cool.
That's about it.
A moi pois.
And some rice, jasmine rice.
Amazing.
Hopefully it's good. There's not that many.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you, Jeremy.
After Jeremy's feast, we followed a path down to the beach where we watched a family of seals playing in the dying light of the day. I was still feeling terrible and returned to the farmhouse hoping that a good night's sleep would get me over the worst of it, because the next day would be riding out onto Svalvogar, the most difficult section of the Westfjords Way. The Westfjords Way all leads up to one road, Svalvogar, the most remote and rugged section of the trip. It's a 60-kilometre track around the coastline built by a farmer in the 1970s who wanted to connect his farm to the nearest town. Some describe it as Iceland's most beautiful road, but the truth is it can hardly be called a road at all. A big chunk is just a rocky beach that disappears at high tide. The track is inaccessible to all but cyclists on the most rugged of 4x4s. It was the day that we'd all been waiting for, the day that had inspired the trip. And we were excited to leave the farmhouse and head out onto this mythical sea road.
It is the start of day 7, and today is the Queen stage. Perhaps not for distance, perhaps not for elevation, but definitely in terms of the amount of gravel we're riding. I think it's going to be a tricky day, a tough day, a long day, moving very slowly on pretty hard to navigate gravel.
I was feeling a little bit better than the day before, but as we set out from the farmhouse and back past Dynjandi Waterfall, my knee was starting to give me all sorts of trouble. What started out as mild irritation at kilometre 3 was sending shooting pains through my legs by kilometre 10, and by kilometre 20 I was questioning whether I should continue. I desperately wanted to ride out onto Svalvogar, but it's not the kind of place to go with a knee that's not playing ball. At the 30-kilometre mark, we made it to a cafe at the former home of Icelandic independence leader Jón Sigurðsson, and the start of the Svalvogar track. And there I made a call that I didn't want to make. I decided to abandon the day. I was in no state to continue on to Svalvogar, where there was next to no chance of rescue if things got really bad, and every kilometre was another kilometre further from help.
It's 30 kilometers into day 7. My knee has given up on me, so I'm giving up on today. And Finn, you have the responsibility to take the GoPro to film the rest of the most beautiful road in the world.
I will
Good luck.
bravely take this opportunity on and take you guys on the road with me.
And I will die.
This is where the adventure splits in two once more. Finn and the rest of the gang headed out to Svalvogar on their bikes, while I joined Jeremy in the car, both of us hobbled by our knees, stewing in the silence left by the group's departure. It was devastating to watch the others cycle off without us, the fellowship fractured once more. And though we'd heard tales of what lay ahead on Svalvogar, none of us really knew what the team had in store.
Okay, we've reached our first river crossing. This is a test of our sealskin waterproof socks. It feels like a big deal to be pushing our bikes through water, and Minka's doing it right now. The question is, have you really done a gravel ride unless you've done a river crossing? This is Finn checking in from day 7 on my iPhone. Currently, we're having a bit of a dramatic midday crisis. I've injured my knee, so I'm half walking, half whimpering up any steep climbs. And secondly, I seem to have lost the GoPro. We don't know exactly where it is. I'm supposed to be doing this, kind of pieces the camera on it, but it's somewhere back there. We are 40 kilometers away from any help. We don't have service, we don't have much food, we don't have any accommodation, and so we've just got to keep cycling and keep pushing on and hope that we make it back all in one piece.
Wow. Good crisp.
Day 7 on the hike-a-bike section on the beach. Here with Minka at the absolute edge of the known world, hiking our bikes through the sand. Come with us to Valhalla. Oh my God, boys.
At about 3 PM, Jeremy and I realised that the team's live location had barely moved, and at this rate they'd run out of food. So we concocted a plan. Svalvogar is one big loop. We were at the far end of the loop, and the team was inching slowly towards us. Jeremy and I would buy some waffles from the waffle shop, drive as far along Svalvogar as we could, and give the team the waffles when they finally reached us. The hours passed quickly as we camped out next to the road, and the team's live location remained frozen in place. We had no idea where they were, no concept of the endless beach of boulders that they were struggling to navigate. So at 6 PM, we decided to create a food stash and go and pick up a proper dinner for the team before the one restaurant in town closed for the night. But as Jeremy and I were about to leave, we saw a white Land Rover driving towards us. We flagged it down, found Thomas and Molly inside, and asked if they could take the boxes of waffles out to the team. They smiled, said that they would try, and drove off onto the treacherous road. It was all up to them now.
No chance.
Amazingly, the improbable plan worked. Molly and Thomas found the team and saved them with the waffles. Meanwhile, Jeremy and I waited in the restaurant, wondering if the team would ever make it back to us.
Well done. How was that?
was by far the hardest day we've done on this trip.
There's one word that summed up today, and that is survival.
You just have no idea.
What it took for us to get to you.
Day of days. I started crying.
You legends for sending waffles with these Icelandic couple. It arrived at the
Literal
best
guardian
time.
angels.
I was wondering if we would make it on the NG looks we had at that point, and they were just like, waffles?
They were so great, those two.
They were lovely.
What a couple of characters.
What's the deal today?
It's like a propulsion system.
Dude, it's reversed though.
It was the final day of our trip, and we were off to a grim start. Iceland deciding to restore equilibrium after all the nice weather we'd had in our first couple of days. But after a day off the bike, I'd gotten over the worst of my cold, and my knee was now feeling strong enough to ride.
Today is the beginning of day 8. 53 kilometers to finish the ride from Þingeyri to Ísafjörður. Pretty bummed out to miss the ride yesterday, but I do think it was the right call. It's a blustery, headwindy, rainy kind of day. One last challenge from the Icelandic weather gods to see us out on this spectacular Westfjords adventure. And it has been spectacular, it has been brilliant.
But the bad weather never seemed to last that long for us in the Westfjords, and just as quickly as the rain came, it passed us by, and we continued beneath blue sky and sun. And in another completely improbable turn of events, someone found my GoPro lying in the rocks by the side of the road, and Jeremy was able to go and collect it. Things were all looking up for our final day. We had one last climb to finish the trip, over the old mountain road to Ísafjörður, which has been usurped by a fancy new tunnel. But before we got there, we had a chance to refuel at Café Sol, where we were served a hearty pot of vegetable soup and some Icelandic crepes, filled with cream and rhubarb jam.
Oh, you were trapped there?
The owner of the cafe told us about life before the tunnel, when snow would separate this valley from Ísafjörður for weeks at a time, and gave us some good luck cinnamon rolls to see us off. And then we turned up towards the mountain road, our final obstacle before Ísafjörður.
So at this point in the ride, we have a choice between that brand new tunnel, which goes straight through the mountain, and this, the old track that goes over the top of the mountain. And for some reason, we've decided to do the dirt track.
When we have that option. Right there. Look at that, we could have done that, but no. No tunnel, just the mountain.
It was at this point that one of Kaz's cleats decided to shear off his shoe, meaning he had to walk pretty much the entire climb. Until the tunnel had been built, this had been the main road connecting to Ísafjörður, climbing up and over a distant mountain pass. Now the road lay abandoned and was no longer maintained, the track strewn with large boulders that had fallen down from the cliffs above.
It's the hardest bit of riding I've done so far. Oh, it's uphill, almost no traction underfoot, walking half of it, riding some of it. Absolutely exhausting. About halfway up it now, still another 300 meters vertical to climb.
After almost 2 hours of climbing, we made it to the top, where we could see the buildings of Ísafjörður down below us. We ate our cinnamon rolls as instructed, took a couple of quick photos, and then turned downhill for our final stretch of gravel, keen to escape the freezing wind. And as we bounced down that last bit of gravel track, I thought back to everything we'd experienced. We'd set out on this adventure with little idea about what the Westfjords would really be like, or the challenges we'd face en route, and it had proved a completely different beast to my previous cycles across Japan and Great Britain. The Westfjords is consistently spectacular and gloriously moody, devoid of people but with high mountains, deep fjords and waterfalls everywhere. It had been an amazing, knee-breaking kind of trip. We were all sporting some battle wounds, but I was feeling incredibly grateful to have experienced this adventure in such fine company. We had been phenomenally lucky with the weather, and I can't escape the feeling that if Iceland had chosen to give us a properly cold or windy or rainy day, the whole thing would have been a lot more miserable. Instead, we'd been treated throughout. We'd come to the Westfjords looking for adventure, and we'd found it in spades. Now we were done. After 8 days on the road, we'd made it back to Ísafjörður and to the end of our Westfjords adventure. We were welcomed back to the fjord hub by Tyler, who had organised the whole trip for us and rented us our bikes. And as one last treat, he'd booked us a table at Ísafjörður's all-you-can-eat fish restaurant. Housed inside a 17th century fishing hut, it serves the catch of the day straight from the port, and it's worth a trip to Ísafjörður just to eat there. We celebrated the finish with a toast of Brennivin, Icelandic fire wine, glad to have all made it round despite our injuries. It had been a remarkable and at times brutal few days of riding, but it was always in great company. Would I recommend it? Absolutely. Just bring some good mates along for the ride.